Hello, everyone, and welcome to Legends and Lessons, where we explore the incredible lives of extraordinary people, drawing inspiration from their stories while improving your English along the way. Today, we dive into the life of a man whose name is synonymous with laughter, resilience, and timeless artistry. From the shadows of poverty to the heights of global fame, his journey is one of triumph, creativity, and an enduring legacy that continues to inspire. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to uncover the extraordinary life of Charlie Chaplin, the genius behind the tramp, the legend who made the world laugh and think in equal measure. Charles Spencer Chaplin was born in London on April 16, 1889. His parents, Hannah Chaplin and Charles Chaplin Sr., were both singers and actors. But when Charlie was very young, his father left, and the family became very poor in London. His mother, Hannah, tried her best to take care of Charlie and his older brother, Sidney, by singing and showing them how to perform. Charlie later said he learned to dance and sing by watching his mother. By the time he was 5, Charlie could copy his mother's songs. A big moment happened one night in 1894 when Hannah's voice suddenly stopped working while she was singing on stage. Charlie was watching nearby. The boss of the show just pushed Charlie onto the stage and told him to do something. So, Charlie sang his mother's song, and the crowd loved it. This was the first time Charlie performed and felt the joy of making people laugh. But life wasn't always happy. Hannah's voice problems were the start of a sickness in her mind. In 1895, she had to go to a mental hospital. Charlie and Sidney were too young to look after themselves, so they were sent to a workhouse, a place for poor people. The next few years were sad. They lived with their father for a while, but he was an alcoholic and treated them badly, so the police had to help. Their father did try to help sometimes, like getting Charlie a job with dancing group in 1897, but it didn't last, and Charlie went back to the workhouse. In 1901, their father died from drinking too much. Soon after, Hannah got very sick again and had to go back to the mental hospital. This time, Charlie was all alone because Sidney had joined the Navy to get away from poverty. For the next 5 years, Charlie did any job he could find to survive, selling newspapers, making toys, working in a print shop, and helping a doctor. If he couldn't find work, he had to sleep on the streets. He also got small parts in plays, like Sherlock Holmes in 1903, but it wasn't enough to make his dream of being an actor come true. Things finally changed in 1908 when Charlie, who was 19 by then, got a job with a show company called Fred Carnot Repertoire Company. He played a drunk in a funny scene. This helped him meet important people, like Stan Laurel. Even more importantly, in 1910, the Fred Carnot Company gave Charlie the chance to tour America, something he had never imagined. In 1912, a movie maker in America named Max Sennett wanted new funny actors for his company, Keystone Films. Charlie was touring America again with Fred Carnot's show and was getting great reviews. So Sennett offered him $150 a week to come work for him making movies. Charlie thought about it for a whole year before saying yes in 1913. Just 2 weeks later, he was making his first movie, Making a Living, which came out in 1914. It wasn't very good because Charlie and the director didn't get along. But then something amazing happened while they were filming a short movie called Mabel's Strange Predicament. Sennett told Charlie to put on some funny makeup. Charlie found some big pants, a small hat, and a cane. He said that as soon as he put on these clothes, he felt like a new person. The little tramp was born. The people working on the movie laughed so much at the tramp that everyone at Keystone stopped to watch. Charlie said he would never perform without his new costume again. And so, on February 7th, 1914, the tramp's second movie, Kid Auto Races at Venice, was a big hit. The tramp made Charlie famous. In 1914, he made 32 more movies for Keystone. When his contract ended, other movie companies wanted him and offered him much more money. One company, SNA Studios, offered him $1,250 a week plus $10,000 just for signing. So Charlie took it. At Esney, he made the little tramp character nicer in the 1915 movie The Tramp, and it was very popular. Then, another company called Mutual Films offered Charlie even more money, $10,000 a week. At 26, Charlie was the highest paid actor in Hollywood. He made 12 short movies for Mutual, and he said those were the happiest years of his life. In 1917, Charlie decided to leave Mutual and start his own movie studio. He made a deal with another company to release his movies without anyone telling him what to do. He was not even 30 years old and was the most famous movie star in America. In the next 10 years, Charlie made some of his best movies. His first long movie, The Kid, came out in 1920. Then came The Gold Rush in 1924, which many people think is his best. In 1928, he made The Circus, which another famous director, Orson Welles, said was the best movie ever. Charlie also started a movie company called United Artists with other stars so they could control their own movies. But while Charlie was doing great in his movie career, his personal life had some problems. In 1918, he secretly married a very young girl named Mildred Harris. She said she was pregnant, which made Charlie panic because she was only 16. The pregnancy turned out to be false, and Charlie treated Mildred very badly. They got divorced in 1920 after she really did get pregnant. The same year, Charlie met a 12-year-old girl named Lita Gray. He stayed close to her for a few years, and when she was around 15 or 16, they became romantically involved. They got married in 1924 because she was pregnant. This marriage was also unhappy. In 1927, Lita filed for divorce and accused Charlie of terrible things. Even though Charlie paid her a lot of money to settle the case, his reputation was hurt. Despite these problems, Charlie's movie The Circus was a big success. He then started working on city lights. Around this time, movies started having sound. The first one was The Jazz Singer in 1927. Many silent movie stars were worried, but Charlie didn't think these talkies would last. However, the Great Depression, which started in 1929, made people feel a connection to Charlie's character, the tramp, who always stayed hopeful even when he was poor. So, even though City Lights was a silent movie that came out in 1931, it was a big success. But Charlie seemed sad about the way the world and movies were changing, so he went on a trip around the world in 1931. During his travels, Charlie met famous people like Albert Einstein and Mahatma Gandhi. But what he saw in Europe, like the rise of strong countries and people feeling very patriotic, worried him. When he came back to Hollywood in 1932, he wanted to do something about these problems. He started making the movie Modern Times, 1936, which made fun of big businesses. He also started to get involved in politics and seemed to support communism. This made some people in America suspicious. In 1939, he started making his first movie with talking, called The Great Dictator. It made fun of leaders like Adolf Hitler. When the movie came out in 1940, America was still not officially in the war. So when Charlie gave a speech at the end of the movie about ending war, some people thought he was a communist trying to push his ideas on them. At this time, some people in the US were worried that Hollywood was full of communists. Charlie's political views just made them more suspicious. After America joined World War II, Charlie spoke out in support of Russia, which was fighting against Germany with the US. But some Americans saw this as proof that he was against America. By 1942, many people in the media were questioning if Charlie was loyal to America. It looked like his career could be ruined if there was a big fear of communism. In 1947, Charlie released a movie called Monsieur Verdoux, a dark comedy about a man who marries and kills women for their money. This movie was very unpopular and almost made his company, United Artists, go bankrupt. People in America saw it as something terrible, like a beloved children's show host doing something very bad. This happened at a time when people were already suspicious of Charlie's political views. Earlier, in 1943, a young actress named Joan Barry sued Charlie, saying he was the father of her child and had abandoned her. Even though Charlie was found not guilty in court, the trial got a lot of bad attention. People remembered how he had treated women in the past and his support for communism. During the trial, he also started a relationship with another young girl, 18-year-old Una O'Neill, whom he later married. Because of the Joan Barry trial, many people turned against him. Some powerful people in the media and the government tried to destroy his career. In 1947, some people in the government wanted Charlie to be kicked out of America. He really needed a successful movie to make people like him again, like City Lights. But instead, he released Monsieur Vadou, which ended with Charlie comparing big businesses to mass murder and saying that all Americans were guilty of war crimes for dropping the atomic bomb. This was the last straw for many people. The government told Charlie he would probably be called to court because they thought he was a communist. Even though he wasn't, they still ruined his reputation. In November 1947, some movie people were sent to jail for refusing to name other communists. After this, many more actors, including Charlie, were blacklisted, meaning they couldn't work in Hollywood anymore. Charlie still had money and power that others didn't. Even though he was blacklisted, he found money to make another movie called Limelight, about an old clown whose best days were over. Before the movie came out in 1952, Charlie decided to go to Europe to promote it. On September 18th, Charlie and his wife Una boarded a ship to England. They wouldn't see America again for 20 years. The next day, the US government cancelled Charlie's permission to re-enter the country. Even though he had lived in the US for 40 years, he had never become an American citizen. So now America wouldn't let him back in. When Limelight was released in the US, people who thought he was immoral or a communist protested against it. Charlie was no longer welcome in the country he had called home. The America that had once loved him now hated him. He was like his own character, the tramp, homeless. His time as the biggest star in Hollywood was over. The rest of Charlie Chaplin's life can be divided into two parts: the time when many people hated him and the time when they finally accepted him, but it was too late. He settled in Switzerland with Una in 1953. In 1957, he made a movie called A King in New York, about a king who had to leave his country and came to the USA, where he faced similar problems that Charlie had. Even though the movie tried to show Americans as good people, America didn't like it. It was banned in many states because it was seen as un-American. This disappointment made the next 10 years difficult for him. He thought about making another movie with the little tramp as someone who survived a nuclear war, but instead, he made a countess from Hong Kong in 1967. Around this time, Charlie's health started to get worse. He had a series of strokes in the 1960s that left him partly disabled. In this condition, he started working on his last project, The Freak, about a girl who grows angel wings and is hunted. He wanted this to be the final part of his life's work, but sadly, he never finished it. As the 1960s turned into the 1970s, Charlie had more strokes. By 1974, he was in a wheelchair and needed constant care. Although he filmed some scenes for The Freak, everyone knew he wouldn't live long enough to finish it. On Christmas Day in 1977, Charlie Chaplin had a final, very bad stroke in his sleep and died at the age of 88. Even though he had returned to the US briefly 5 years earlier to receive a special award from the Academy Awards, he was still living in exile, not sure if America would ever truly want him back. Usually, we would end a story like this with a summary of the person's life. But there's one more strange and sad thing that happened to Charlie Chaplin. In March 1978, two men who had come from communist Eastern Europe dug up Charlie's body and stole it. They kept it hidden for 11 weeks and asked for money from his family. Finally, the Swiss police caught one of the men trying to call Una for the ransom. They arrested him and found Charlie's body. He was quickly buried again, this time under a concrete slab so it couldn't happen again. Even though this is a terrible story, maybe Charlie would have seen some humor in it. The two grave robbers were poor immigrants who wanted to make some quick money to help their families. Even though the little tramp never did anything that extreme, his life wasn't that different in many ways. Charlie's movies were some of the first to really show sympathy for poor people and their struggles, hopes, and dreams. He took their hard lives and turned them into amazing movies that were not just funny, but also full of understanding. He might have been difficult sometimes, but Charlie Chaplin was the greatest clown who ever lived. Even though his life had many sad parts, he brought joy to millions of people. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the life of Charlie Chaplin. His story reminds us that even in the face of adversity, we can find humor, hope, and the strength to rise above. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and don't forget to subscribe to Legends and Lessons for more inspiring tales and English learning opportunities.